Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the disability community.
Yeah, so my name is Darlene Norman, and I currently am in California. I got into the disability community professionally at first. I got my graduate degree at Eastern Washington University in the field of school psychology. And after finishing that program, I began working at it as a school psychologist in public education. So I primarily work with students who are somewhere between 3 years old to up to 21, 22 years old in special education services. But I also provide support in the general education environment for students who uh, and participate on intervention teams and things like that. But eventually, my husband and I, we welcomed our first and only child, our daughter, who was born with Charge syndrome. And so she has been an introduction to stepping into the parent side of um, supporting an individual with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, like, what sorts of things do you do as a school psychologist? What sorts of things do you like work on with individuals with disabilities? Because I understand you work in that field.
Mhm. Yeah, so the what I do as a school psychologist can vary. It really depends on the school that you work in and how they might utilize that role. But as a school psychologist, one of the primary responsibilities is conducting psychoeducational evaluations, and that's to participate on the evaluation team or the individual education plan team for students when they're initially qualifying for special education services, or when a student is in the process of having a triennial evaluation completed to determine their continuing need for special education services. So conducting the psychoeducational evaluations is the first and primary job role essentially, because we're one of the few um, team members that participates in doing so. And we cover a variety of areas, including cognitive testing. There's also cognitive processing testing that's included in that. We can do academic testing, social emotional testing, and adaptive behavior testing. And we work with any team member that's should be included in the student's evaluation or IEP team. So we do a lot of consultations with parents, with general education teachers, special education teachers, other support team members like speech and language pathologists, administrators, occupational therapists, physical therapists, adaptive PE specialists. And there's other types of disability specialists that support low incidence needs, such as teachers of the visually impaired, orientation mobility specialists, deaf hard of hearing specialists, orthopedic impairment specialists. There's a whole list of team members. Oh, and not to forget behavior specialists. Um, so in addition to the psychoeducational evaluations, school psychologists can also perform functional behavior assessments. So if there's a behavior of concern, an evaluation can be done to determine the function of a behavior and also to help create a behavior support plan to help work on addressing challenging behaviors for replacement behaviors, and turn some of those challenges into more positive experiences and learning. Um, and then we can also do some service delivery, which includes counseling services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I also understand that you created a project called Idea. What is that and like how did that come about?
Yeah, so being a parent of a child with special needs, especially a child with Charge syndrome, her educational disability category is deaf blind, which is a very rare educational disability. It's also a rare syndrome, and it's a rare medically and educationally complex syndrome. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of team educational team members that a child may have as part of their service providers. Well, this a child with deaf blind, but particularly a child with Charge syndrome, has a whole bunch of specialists. And so it's usually a large IEP team that the family is working with. And in addition to the educational side of it, there's the medical needs. So children with Charge syndrome have a large number of medical specialists. And so it's really challenging to be organized and to also learn how to navigate the various disability systems of support. So that the first one's educational, but the medical community is another one. And there's also the disability support services community. So what we've done as a family is to help try to coordinate our communication and care, especially with our educational team, because the team does tend to change over um, from year to year. There's new team members, and there's a lot of information to share about a child, such as our daughter. And so we've created a website. So where we just picked her name and we built a website based off of that. So it's easy for people to remember. And then within it, what we've done is created different web pages that help tell her background information, information that's relevant to her. She happens to be learning sign language as one of her modes of communication. And also she's got medical complexities such as a G tube or gastrostomy tube for feeding, because it's not safe for her to orally eat and drink for hydration and nutrition. And so what we've done is created YouTube videos that allow her to be the star of her YouTube channel and to give an introduction of herself to her team, also show others how she uses her G tube and how others can help her with it. But the concept is called, or the original concept is a personal portfolio that David Brown, who is a Charge syndrome educational expert, and he's written about that topic and done numerous presentations to the Charge syndrome or the deafblind community, both nationally and internationally. And this was, let's see, 2 summers ago, where the Charge syndrome conference had to be held virtually because of the pandemic. And so I was participating in one of the webinars, and I decided to take that concept, which is most often done on paper, where parents are encouraged to write about their child and then to be able to use that to share information to their educational team. But with the complexities of our children, I decided to turn that into more of a website because it's easy to update. It's easy to share with others. We use a format that allows us to keep her information protected and private. And so what we've done is use it to be able to update and to share with people who need to know, but then we can reduce the access when they don't need to know, because it involves listing out all her different providers for her educational team, her disability community team in the community, and also her medical providers. And it's an avenue to be able to have a one-stop resource. So that way, if anybody has questions or concerns, they can go to that and learn more information about her, have access to her updated documents, and get it from there. And the term of this project, it's called Embraced IDEA, which ideally, or what it's, it can be have a reference to IDEA as the special education law. However, its actual acronym stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And so we've created this as a family company to be able to, as our daughter learns and grows, to be able to have an opportunity to learn job skills. So she knows how to update her website personally and can knows how to get to the different pages, change the wording. We're working on teaching her how to do other updates, like embedding videos when we have some updates to make, adding photos and such. And so the idea is that we can use this to help teach her post-secondary transition skills for planning for what she wants to do after she graduates high school. And so we're using it as a multi-layered approach to support our daughter, but also as a way to keep us organized and a way to disseminate information easily, because it can be a lot to manage all the things with having a child in the disability community.
Yeah. So, like, how important is having, that connection between parents and disability service providers? How can that shape an individual's educational and personal aspirations?
Yeah, I would say it's very important. I feel very fortunate that I started in the field professionally, and so I was able to learn and understand the educational disability community side of things and understand the systems. However, as important as education is, it only lasts until the child graduates from high school or up till age 21, 22. And when that education stops, then you really need to stay connected to what's available in the larger community. So building relationships and rapport with other disability organizations that are lifelong are really important. So there's plenty of organizations, and if other parents are or community members are interested in learning about it, there's information resource centers that are dedicated specifically to special education supports, but there's other local ones or even, sorry, national ones that can be identified that are location based, either state or across the nation, that help provide those unique supports. So finding disability communities related to your child's diagnosis is really important because they can follow you along the lifespan. They're available for that type of support. Community resources is another one. There's a local organization called Parents Helping Parents, and they end up having a wonderful resource center that allows for both educational professionals, medical professionals, and family members to be able to seek information and supports in a variety of areas. So essentially, there's so much information out there to be aware of and hard to keep on top of. So being able to use those professional supports in a way that in the information out there is a great way to stay connected and to reach out and touch base with any resource professional that can help with finding the information that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like, my last question here is, how can your work in educational psychology and this project in particular really reduce the stigma of disability? Because I know there's a lot of that in our society. And like, my second part of that question is, how do you create an inclusive and welcoming environment for these individuals?
All right, I'll start with the inclusion side of things. I think one of the things that it's really important to help teach others is that the inclusion side of things is really about having access to the community, and it's not just about um, being a part of it, but there needs to be meaningfulness in that approach. And so there is much to learn from the disability community to teach others who have little to no exposure to it, that inclusion matters, and inclusion also has the aspect of having a sense of belonging. Because it's one thing to be to be available or being in the community itself by itself on its own, but without that sense of belonging, there really is something missing. And so there are so many organizations that are in our communities that help to create that by creating small groups and having a sense to go out into the world and do activities together with either like individuals or creating more of a diverse community. So that way there's inclusion with both people who have similar needs, but others who don't. There's more of a diversity. Um, and so in the realm of school psychology, and also I have a private practice as a licensed educational psychologist in California, the Resilient Minds Collective Group. And one of the things that we see that's really important, and that I use as my takeaway with working with clients, both who are children, but also their parents, and then adults with disabilities, is that there is a sense of ownership, of understanding, to be able to help empower individuals to advocate for themselves and their family needs, because the continuum for what experiences that they have is really vast. And so being a parent and starting our organization of Embraced IDEA, but working in the disability community as a professional, I find that what's most helpful is to create resources for families because they often have a lot of questions, whether they're new to the disability community and they're at the beginning stages of understanding of what is the most pressing information I need to know right now, and then working with them along the lifespan. Because when a parent becomes introduced to the world of disabilities unexpectedly, it can be overwhelming. And so what we try to do is meet parents where they're at, in terms of giving them information that's most needed and relevant at this time, but also letting them know and encouraging them that there are supports along the way, and that at any time that they have questions or they're ready for more information, that we as professionals can be able to help support them with that. Um, Sometimes what I also try to do is to help parents think about the long term. Um, there's a bit of a grief cycle that parents will go through when they discover that their child has a disability, because there's a lot of unknowns of what to expect, and that can be hard for families. And so letting them know that, you're each step of the way, that there's a cheerleader with you, and that there's much to be hopeful for and to love and experience along the way. Each moment that we have with our children is a gift, and we want to help families understand and appreciate that as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that part is important just to meet parents where they're at.
Mhm.